From Illinois Public Media News, this is 217 Today. I'm Kimberly Schofield. It's Thursday, August 1st. Coming up, we'll listen to a conversation with U.S. Paralympian Brian Siemann about the upcoming games and his journey to becoming an athlete. That story in just a few minutes, but first, these headlines. The University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign is offering $2,000 plus meal tickets to returning students to move off campus. That's because there are too many students this year and not enough dorms. U of I spokesperson Allison Vance says the university has given out cancellation incentives before, but hasn't needed to in recent years. She says delays in the federal government's new FAFSA process pushed back the university's usual admission and financial aid cycle. That caused changes in the housing department's process. She also says the university wasn't sure whether more students would opt out because of the financial aid uncertainty or after the Supreme Court struck down race-based affirmative action. Instead, an unusual number of students, especially from other states, seem to have opted in. Vance says that despite the inconvenience, the university housing experience will be the same as ever. A punk rock reimagining of Lizzie Borden's murder trial opens today at the Station Theater in Urbana. IPM reporter Adeline Moy has more.
Lizzie the Musical features a 4-woman cast and tells the story of Lizzie Borden, an American woman who was tried and acquitted of the 1892 hatchet murders of her father and stepmother. Director Sophia Urban says that a rock musical centering female voices was right up their alley.
The musical basically decides to take any myth that has ever existed and treat that as the truth. It really just explores the themes of breaking free and agency without really trying to actually solve the case or anything.
The show runs from August 1st through August 18th. I'm Adeline Moy, IPM News.
More than 100 protesters gathered at the Chicago hotel where former President Donald Trump was speaking before the National Association of Black Journalists. Michael Puente reports.
Many protesters on Michigan Avenue carried signs that insulted Trump, and some chanted slogans that included profanity. But Trump probably didn't catch much of that since he was escorted into the Chicago Hilton through a rear entrance. Hatem Abudaya is chair of the U.S.-Palestinian Community Network.
We will always challenge racism and fascism, especially when it's manifested by somebody like Donald Trump, especially in our city.
Although outnumbered, there were about a dozen Trump supporters carrying signs of support and wearing those famous red Make America Great Again hats. Michael Puente, WBEZ News.
Illinois lawmakers are introducing a bill they say will transform public higher education in the state. The legislation would stabilize funding for public universities and shift much of the burden of tuition from students to the state. But it would require a $1.4 billion investment over the next decade. State Representative Carol Ammons says the investment is necessary because most jobs require a college degree.
If that is the requirement to get a job to be able to have a living wage, then you're going to actually have to provide education to your populace. Most states have figured this out already.
Ammons and other sponsors hope to have the legislation passed and on the governor's desk by next year. Still to come, we'll listen to a conversation with U.S. Paralympian Brian Siemann about the upcoming games and his journey to becoming an athlete. That story is coming up next on 217 Today.
Next time on the 21st show, Abraham Lincoln GPT. We'll have a conversation with the 16th President of the United States as interpreted by the AI language model GPT-4.
The true strength of our nation lies in its people and their commitment to justice.
I'm Brian Mackey. That's next time on the 21st show. Join us.
You're listening to 217 Today. I'm Kimberly Schofield. Athletes around the world are preparing for the Paris 2024 Paralympics that kick off at the end of August. Brian Siemann, a local resident, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign graduate, and 4-time Paralympian, will compete in the 100, 400, 800, 5,000, and marathon events for the U.S. Paralympic track and field team. I have known Siemann since 2008 and recently interviewed him about the upcoming games and his journey to becoming an athlete. You qualified for the Paris Paralympics this year. What did you have to do to qualify? What did the trials entail?
Okay, so Paralympic trials is a unique event in and of itself in that it is every member of the US track and field team vying for a spot for the Paris team. And the way that the United States does it is we receive a certain number of slots through the International Paralympic Committee. Basically, the United States will fill those spots through a ranking list. And you get your spot on the ranking list by hitting a percentage of the United States A standard for track, and also having a top 3 finish in the final of an event. So it's a little complicated if you're watching it for the first time and you don't know what's going on, because sometimes there's combined classifications as well, because you'll have athletes with different disabilities competing in the same race, but as different classes. It's a very complicated and complex process for the average viewer.
Can you explain then, because is it a T53 athlete? Is that the right classification?
Yeah, so with wheelchair racing, there are 4 main classifications. So it goes through T51 to T54. 51s and 52s are typically quadriplegic athletes, and depending on the level of severity, they get put either in the 51 or 52. And with 53s and 54s, it's the same situation. So a T54 athlete would be an athlete who has the least level of limitations on their function. So a lot of times the way I describe it to people is that 54 athletes have abdominal control, so they can use their abs, whereas a T53 athlete does not. And so I fall into the T53 category. So the way that my spinal cord injury impacts me is that I have no function below sort of like my nipple line. And so there's no ability for me to control my core.
When did you start racing?
I started racing in high school, which is later than some people. I kind of never knew that sports, like adapted sports, existed. My high school coach, he had asked me if I could walk or if I just had a broken leg when he saw me in a wheelchair. And when I told him I used the wheelchair permanently, he asked me to join the track team, which was a little bit of a jarring conversation on your first day of high school. He had never coached an athlete with a disability before. He had seen other disabled athletes competing at the state meet. And he basically just said, I'm willing to give it a try if you are.
Wow.
And so we kind of figured it out together. My school raised money for my first racing chair. That kind of got me going. I worked out with them every day. I got connected with another team, which is where I found out about the University of Illinois, because I didn't even know that a program like this existed. And then the rest is kind of history with me coming here, and now I work here.
Can I ask how you got into the wheelchair? What is your injury?
Yeah. So I don't mind talking about this. So I have a spinal cord injury, an acquired spinal cord injury. Another fun fact about me that some people know, some people don't, is that I'm a quadruplet. My sisters and I were born 2 months premature, but we were as healthy as you could be for being 2 months premature. And when I was 6 days old, my doctor left my umbilical catheter open, which caused me to lose a third of the blood in my body, which caused spinal shock and paralyzed me. So even though I'm an acquired spinal cord injury, I've essentially lived my entire life as, using a wheelchair or any other kind of mobility device to get around.
Have you qualified for the Olympics before?
Yes, so this is my 4th Paralympic Games. My first was in 2012 in London, and then I qualified in 2016 in Rio, and 2020 for the Tokyo Games that were then held in 2021.
What is your training schedule like? Who do you train with? How is the University of Illinois' facility helping you achieve your goals?
The University of Illinois wheelchair track team, it is the best location in the world to train. We have a gym in our training center that is fully accessible, which is really great. And then we actually are we're a designated Paralympic training center for wheelchair racing. And so our basement is set up with rollers for high-speed training, especially we use those in the wintertime. So our typical trainings, we'll train twice a day, 6 days a week. We'll usually, our morning sessions will include high-speed interval training. Our afternoon sessions will either be in the gym weightlifting, or we'll be out on the road, more of a longer distance, steady pace, so anywhere from like 15 to 20 miles. And we do that, and we have a large group of athletes here, and we've stayed here because of the unique training environment. We have the best in the world, and so we're all pushing each other. We're working together, and it just sort of makes it really hard to leave, because if you leave, you don't have access to all of these supports. it's really a great place to be.
Siemann has yet to win any Paralympic medals, but has won 2 World Championship medals, bronze in the 400 and 800 in Paris last year. You can tune in to the 21st show tomorrow at 11 a.m. to hear an even more in-depth conversation with Siemann. You can catch the Paralympic Games August 28th through September 8th. And finally, in your forecast, meteorologist Andrew Pritchard says today will be partly cloudy with showers and thunderstorms likely and a high of 88 degrees. That's it for today. 217 Today is produced by Stephanie Mosqueda. Reporting today contributed by Emily Hayes, Adeline Moy, Michael Puente, Lisa Kurian-Phillip, and Kimberly Schofield. Music by the Kilbourne Alley Blues Band. Reginald Hardwick is our news director. I'm Kimberly Schofield. 217 Today is a production of Illinois Public Media. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.